Hey, everybody. I'm Jeff Pollard at solarpowerthepeople.org and Jeff Pollard 11. I'm with some cool people right now, Stephen Mayfield and Tom Cooke. Thank you so much. We're going to be talking about BLUEVIEW, BLUEVIEW footwear to be specific. What is that about? Please tell me about yourself and tell me what makes this footwear special.
You go, Tom.
All right. So I'm Tom Cooke, president and co-founder of BLUEVIEW Footwear, partner to Steve Mayfield, our CEO. What is BLUEVIEW? So we created the world's first biodegradable and durable sneaker using materials that Steve invented in his lab at UCSD here in La Jolla. Essentially, we invented biodegradable polyurethane out of Steve's lab and use that material to create the world's first scientifically verified biodegradable and durable sneaker. Amazing breakthrough.
No, that's huge. Let me just show you the version that I got. I purchased one myself.
Nice.
It's a little beat up, because I'm using it. But yes, thank you for coming, Stephen. Tell me a little bit about yourself.
So I'm Steve Mayfield. As Tom pointed out, I'm a deep nerd. I've been at UC San Diego a long time. I'm also an entrepreneur. My sort of belief is something cool that you invent in lab, if it stays in lab or just gets a publication, doesn't really help the world. You have to turn it into a product if you want to make a difference. And so we had invented, biodegradable polyurethanes made from algae, and we wanted to commercialize them. I ran into Tom. He was at Reef at the time. And then we just started talking about, hey, what we really need to do is make our own company so we can get these things so that we can be sort of in charge of the boat, right? We get to decide like how pure the brand is. So for example, the shoe that Tom designed and we built, it's 100% compostable. It's not like, oh, parts of it are bio-based or parts of it are compostable. Man, we went the full, 100 yards on this guy and made something that you can throw into that shoe you just held up, Jeff. You can throw that into your home compost pile and that thing will completely biodegrade every part of it in less than 6 months.
Nothing bad will.
No, the mulch, Tom just made a TikTok video taking the mulch from that stuff and growing corn in it.
Wow. No,
you can garden with these things.
I kind of want to touch upon a little quick story. I bought a gym shoe once and it broke apart after a while. And you don't realize that like even the back of the heel area, there was a plastic, thing to hold the shoe up and all that. And so it's just like, as that was even breaking apart, that's microplastic. That was falling apart. I couldn't control it. I'm shaking it out. I'm creating microplastics with my shoe. I just want to say thank you, you two, real quick, because that's a huge deal. I love hearing that. That's 100%. That's crazy. So I do want to say I got my noisy little cat right here. So thank you, everybody.
Right.
If you can hear her, she's talking right now.
That's funny.
But so you got the BLUEVIEW shoe, 100%. Is there like how did this come about? Like what were the kind of processes, could you tell me, to get it going, to like create this, to get a business, to get it out there? Was there any?
Yeah. Well, let me start on the science and then I'll let Tom explain about what it takes to develop the shoe because they're two related but kind of separate processes. So initially we were going to take algae and turn it into biofuels. That was a big deal a decade ago, 12 years ago, right? And then we sort of recognized, man, we're never going to making fuel out of oil from algae and burning it in a car is kind of a waste. Let's make cool things out of it. So we started to make food and then we looked around and said, hey, let's make polymers. And when we decided to make polymers, it just became obvious that we should make polyurethanes. Yeah, they're in the surfboard, they're in shoes, they're in lots of things that are kind of cool consumer products, but they're also one of the few polymers that can biodegrade. A urethane bond can break down by microorganisms. So at least we knew there was the potential to biodegrade that thing at the end of life. Then it became a matter of, could we actually develop high performance polyurethanes? Because nobody wants to buy a crappy shoe or a crappy surfboard. Could we develop high performance polyurethanes that met specification and still biodegraded? And we achieved that about 3 years ago. And then we're like, well, okay, we've got the material now, but we don't know shit about making shoes, right? But we had decided that should be our first product. And fortunately, I met Tom, and Tom knows a boatload about making shoes. He did it for 25 years. So we're like, hey, buddy, come on over. and we'll give you a surfboard and you show us how to make shoes. So Tom, tell them about the shoemaking process.
Yeah, it's so interesting when you think about what it was like to be in footwear companies even 10 or 15 years ago. There's so much greenwashing, which really just means companies misleading you and making claims that aren't really completely true, right? So when you're the head of product, my background, 25 years in footwear, I had a crazy ride at Vans. I was there for 16 years, was a part of the team that grew that brand from 100 million to 1.5 billion. And Vans in the early days, wasn't really as into sustainability. VF Corporation, who owns Vans, is really into sustainability at this point. So a lot's changed in the last 10 to 15 years. But from my perspective, gone from Vans then to Reef, and as head of product at Reef, we were really intent on making, a tremendous amount of progress in what I would call eco innovation. And it's two areas really where you can make the biggest gains and biggest positive impact. One is the materials you put into the product, and two is the energy you use to run the factory. And let's just start with the materials, which relates to the piece Steve talked about. I look back on my time at Reef, and I went up to a conference in Santa Cruz called the Global Wave Conference, and I actually presented Steve's project, this new material that we were looking at. And I was up there with like surf industry entrepreneurs and companies. I was up there with, essentially innovation people and then sustainability people. It was kind of those three groups. And I remember meeting Dr. Marcus Erickson from Five Gyres, and they were talking about all the materials that you could use for like plastic bags or materials that were going into product. And I'm like, how do you like separate what's real and what's not real? And I remember Dr. Erickson was like, well, do you guys employ scientists? And the answer was no. Well, do you guys have scientists as your consultants? The answer was no. And he's like, you're going to struggle to separate what's real from what's fake. And that's essentially played out over the last 10 or 15 years. Like if companies aren't employing scientists to help advise them on what's real and what's not real in materials, that's really where it starts. You can't just buy stuff off the shelf and expect it to be truly sustainable. Steve and I have run into this multiple times where companies try to sell us stuff to go into our products that they claim biodegrades and it doesn't. And it's only when you put it in a biodegradation chamber under the watchful eye of material scientists that they tell you the shit doesn't work. And so for me, my journey was a journey to Steve to be able to truly separate what's true from what's fake. And ultimately it's science. You have to employ or be under the advisement of scientists. And so what, that was like step one, was like, okay, get to the truth. Step two is once you have the truth and you understand which materials are real and which are fake, then, there's this interesting journey with Steve, right? Like you find a real material, it's stuck in the lab, and you got to get it out of the lab and into a factory. And oh boy, talk about an interesting process. That's been the last like 3 years of Steve and I's life, prying this material out of lab and getting it working in a factory. And let me tell you what, on our resumes, one of the number one accomplishments is going to be we commercialized a brand new biotechnology virtually over Zoom during a global pandemic. That was an interesting process.
We paid our
hat,
dues.
so I can give you a hats off.
We paid our dues.
Hats off to you. No, that's a huge feat. Any entrepreneur of the sort would tell you just the amount of just ridiculous BS that goes into trying to get something off the ground. I truly admire that. So we talked about how you guys are a couple of guys that really care. Can you briefly, each one of you tell me what's the future? What is it you want to do now? What do you want to do next? You have the shoe, you have the product. We're happy to get it out there. What is it you want to expand on?
Well, I'll start from my perspective, right? When we started this, I recognized, hey, we've got to sell some shoes so we can demonstrate the material. But the ultimate goal is this material is everywhere. So now we've got the shoes on the market. That's brought other brands to us who go, oh, because we publish our material and we certify it, right? But in outside labs, right? And so now other companies are coming to us and say, oh, we want to use your material too. So my goal now over the next 5 years is continue to develop cool new products with Tom, right? So that we can continue to expand, the sort of brand and the brand awareness, but then to get this into every single, like my goal is that in 5 years, there are no shoes that are made from petroleum. They're all made from plants and they're all 100% biodegradable. That's a goal.
Okay.
Yeah. And I would say the same. Steve has this quote that always resonates with me, which is, hey, the small victories, we sell some shoes. The big victories, we transform industries. So we can start with footwear, right? It's anywhere from the 4th to the 10th most polluting industry worldwide, a part of the greater sort of fashion industry. You think of fashion as apparel, footwear, accessories. I mean, these are really, really dirty industries that are using cheap, forever petroleum commodities. The entire industry is addicted to that, addicted to the gross margins that come from these cheap sort of petroleum incumbent materials. So our vision is, look, there's this horrific end of life plastic pollution problem. If you look at the forever 400 to 500 year plastics and what they're doing to the oceans, clogging up landfills. They're now in our bodies, our bloodstream, our lungs. We're breathing in microplastics. It's a disgusting problem. The only way to fix it is to reinvent the material. Plastic is basically a design flaw. It just simply outlives the useful life of the product that it's in. So it was over-engineered. So we have this sort of over-engineering of the material, but we also have this horrible overproduction problem. We make 25 billion pairs of shoes every year for only 8 billion people on the planet. And the estimates are that a third of that 25 billion go into landfill every single year. That is a disgusting fact. Okay. So we're literally burying our problems in a giant pit in the ground that is no real weight. It's just hiding the problem. So until we gain control over, the material supply chain and switch that's really the end game vision. We've got to reinvent these materials, and we sort of have to reinvent manufacturing as well. And so fortunately, Steve and Mike Burkhart and the rest of the science team have sort of at least started the process by reinventing these wonderful materials. I mean, I joked with Steve, hey, you invented my dream material right here in my backyard. When I was head of global product at Reef, we were having conversations internally like, dude, surely there has to be an ocean biodegradable foam we can put in these flip-flops. It's great that we're cleaning up beaches. It's great that we're taking responsibility, but we're making products that are going to wind up polluting those very same beaches because they're made of non-degradable petroleum junk. And so that's sort of step one. Then step two is kind of gaining greater control over these factories, renewable energy in the factories, all these kinds of things that'll lower the carbon footprint and lower the end of life footprint of these industries. Sure. We're going to ultimately need legislation to help, both incentives for bio-based materials and penalties for the continued use of these petroleum materials. And, when we can get to those kinds of concepts, we're going to accelerate the adoption. But it's already starting, like ESG policies, which stands for environmental, social governance strategies. These big companies, they're already starting to put some mandates in to shift, right? And use science-backed materials and use more bio-based materials and so on. But we need better incentives and better penalties.
Sure. I mean, you guys are paving the way, and it just starts with making a shoe, and you guys are, doing that because then the public can get aware of it and all that. So I really appreciate it. Really quickly, just because we want to, support as much as we can. I showed you one shoe, and it's kind of like a like you said, it's like a slip-on. Or it's like a Vans in a way, but what is there a different style that people can look at, or are you guys is there a taste of other types we can look at too in the future, or what's available?
We're working on new products right now, more attractive from a retail price point perspective, because early feedback on all these sustainable products is, wow, they're pretty expensive. And the main reason they're expensive is because the materials we put into the product are more expensive. We're working on a mule style, that you can slide into the back on the existing tooling that you just showed from BLUEVIEW. We're also working on a slide sandal. So we've got some exciting things coming.
Okay.
Flip flops?
Steve, are you designing them? Is this what you do with your spare time?
No. Tom is the designer. Tom designs these things. But I just work on trying to make new materials and then get new materials into new things. So here's a pretty cool one that's coming, and that's polyurethane coated fabric, right? So this is a raincoat. I mean, wouldn't cover up very much, but the material can be used for a raincoat. And so we're in the lab always trying to come up with new materials. And then Tom is also asking for new materials as a designer. So for example, he wants a winter shoe now. Well, a winter shoe can't be that knit one that you've got or that I'm wearing right now, Jeff, because that thing, the rain just goes right through them. So now we need one that we can coat. So what did we do? We made canvas that we could coat with our polyurethane so it's waterproof, right?
Okay.
And so now that's going to come out hopefully next year. Tom's already working on it now to get a lace-up shoe that would be a good winter shoe.
Yeah.
Right? So you can wear it out.
Well, lastly, I just want to finish up how, obviously we can purchase the shoe. Is there any other way we can support? Is there just any kind of thought or notion you kind of want to leave us with,
Well, I'm going to leave you with this one thing that I always tell the students in my classes, right?
Okay.
And that is, you guys, consumers underestimate the power they have, right? The big brands will avoid doing the right thing for as long as they can because they're making plenty of money right now doing the wrong thing. The only thing that changes industry is when consumers tell them, we're not buying your crap anymore. This is what Tesla did with the electric car. GM, Ford, Volkswagen, they could have made the electric car 10 years ago. All of them sat around and did nothing because they were making boatloads of money on their internal combustion engines. Tesla came up, made the #1 selling car in the world, the Model 3, and then all of a sudden, all of them are like, oh, we're all about electric cars. We've always been about electric cars. So and why? That's because consumers told them, we're not going to buy your crap anymore. We're only going to buy electric cars. So you guys have to get out, not only buy our shoes, but demand. You tell Adidas, right? When you get your little feedback and you buy a product from them, you tell them, hey, this might be a cool little sports jersey that I can support my World Cup team. Why is this thing made with polyester, things that are going to come microplastic? Knock that off, Adidas. And you'd be surprised how powerful you can be if consumers get together with one voice.
Voice of the many. I agree. Do you have any last words of wisdom? Anything you would like the viewers to know about?
Well, look, I think Steve nailed it on that one. I mean, get behind what you believe in. We've all got a collective effort to play here in changing the world for the better and cleaning up the planet. There's a lot at stake, I think, is one thing I would add. We're destroying the planet is the bottom line. We're cutting down wilderness area, biodiversity loss, we're polluting ecosystems. And we think that this perpetual train of economic growth and laissez-faire capitalism is going to be a solution, or we think we can just do green growth forever. I think it's just being more efficient, buying less, buying smarter. And this comes back to BLUEVIEW. Like, we hope all of your viewers will support BLUEVIEW. I think the best thing you can do for us is word of mouth. This is a great podcast opportunity for us to get our message out there and why BLUEVIEW really matters. The bottom line is, if you buy our shoes and you love our shoes, tell everyone you know about BLUEVIEW footwear and tell everyone you know about Dr. Mayfield and the wonderful inventions he's making. And we'll keep them coming. I mean, look, this is just step one. We invented biodegradable polyurethane foam for use in fashion industry. Steve just showed you some of the cool new stuff he's working on. We've got biodegradable TPUs that can lead to rigid plastics. We've got these, TPUs that can lead to coated fabrics, and all of these just wonderful new materials that, look, they're only going to improve the products. They're only going to be able to help us make new, exciting, cool, innovative stuff. So yeah, just word of mouth's great. I mean, it's very difficult getting your message out there now, and it's very expensive getting your message out there. Yeah. So we definitely appreciate you, Jeff. Thanks for doing this.
Terrific. No, I'm happy to help. Once again, I'm with Dr. Stephen Mayfield and Tom Cooke. I appreciate it. I appreciate BLUEVIEW footwear, the 100% biodegradable shoe. That is just astounding to me. Very awesome. Thank you for putting in the energy to do that and to just kind of care. So thank you
Yeah.
guys.
Thank you, Jeff. Thanks for spreading the word.
Yeah,
All right,
thanks,
I
Jeff.
appreciate it. Take care,
too.
everybody. Hey everybody, I hope you enjoyed the video. I have some exciting news. I teamed up with BLUEVIEW Shoes. That's a shoe company that makes a 100% biodegradable shoe. That's 100% eco-friendly. I have a pair myself. They're stylish, they're comfortable, they do the job. If you want a pair yourselves, look in the description box for any links or discounts or wherever links are found, depending on where I post this. You'll be helping the little guy, that's me, and you'll be helping a company that truly cares. That's BLUEVIEW Shoes, a shoe that is 100% biodegradable. Leave only footprints.